Hello everyone and welcome back to Next Gen Gaming SC. Josh Snyder here, and we are set to kick off coverage from SCG CON Atlanta this past weekend. We are going to start with coverage from the 1K event on Friday. And boy, do we have a great match to start with. It was Mike Gemme, aka BobbySapphire from KTOD, versus Frank Myers from Bothan Network. Sure to be a good one as we kick off coverage from Atlanta. We are set for round 3 action here at SCG CON Atlanta at the 1K event. And we've got quite a showdown for you here in round 3. Mike, aka BobbySapphire from KTOD on the left, piloting Quinlan TT. And then we have Frank from Bothan Network on the right, piloting Sabine ECL. Both of these players from two very well-known communities here in Star Wars Unlimited, and both players have quite the resume so far in their early Star Wars Unlimited playing days. And here in Game 1, we will see Frank start with the initiative, and he is going to start with the Sabine action ability, dealing 1 damage to each base, seeing what Mike does here. And Mike will just pass right back over to Frank, looking for Frank to play that first unit. Frank does play Alliance X-Wing. And then Mike is going to play Sabine, use the Quinlan triggered ability that allows Mike to deal 1 damage to the Alliance X-Wing. So when Mike plays a unit, he can exhaust Quinlan, and as long as the unit he played has the same cost as an opposing unit, he can deal 1 damage to it. Frank claims the initiative, and with that damage dealt to Alliance X-Wing, it set up Mike being able to use the epic action on Tarkin Town, which defeats Frank's turn 1 play. Frank will start round 2 with the initiative, and it looks like Frank is going to use his epic action on Energy Conversion Lab. He's going to play the Sundari Peacekeeper, giving the Peacekeeper ambush. So Peacekeeper ambushing into Sabine. Sabine defeated. The Sundari Peacekeeper has Raid 2, so attacks for 3 power, just enough to defeat Sabine. Also has Restore 2, so Frank was able to restore that 1 damage on his base. And then Mike is going to play his own 3-cost unit. Red 3 in the Space Arena. Quinlan triggered ability once again, 1 damage to the Peacekeeper. And then Frank using the Sabine action ability once again in round 2, 1 damage to each base. And that does allow Mike to claim the initiative. So he will make the first play here in round 3. Both players jockeying for board position here early in Game 1, as both players have already used up the epic action on their bases. So we'll see what play Mike wants to make here in round 3. Does he have an answer for the Peacekeeper? That Peacekeeper brings quite a swing in the damage count, with the ability to attack for 3 and restore 2, a 5 damage swing. Certainly favorable for Frank. And we're going to see Mike start the round out with Kira. So Kira allows Mike to take a look at Frank's hand. We see a Battlefield Marine, a Rebel Pathfinder, a Fleet Lieutenant, and Rebel Assault. And Mike can name a card. And while Kira is in play, Frank would have to pay 3 more resources for the named card. Now, Mike could theoretically name a card that Frank didn't have in his hand, but he could certainly name a card that Frank is showing here and have an extra 3 cost attached to it. Now keep in mind, the Peacekeeper is not a Rebel unit, so the Fleet Lieutenant and Rebel Assault will not do anything with the Peacekeeper. And Mike is just going to name Rebel Assault. So that Rebel Assault would cost 4 for Frank to play, while Kira is in play. And with the next action, Frank is going to use the Sabine action ability once again. He's used that ping ability once each round here in game one, so an extra damage to each base. And then Mike is going to attack Frank's base with red 3, so 3 damage to Frank's base. But with that Peacekeeper in play, Frank is going to potentially bring another big swing in the damage count. And Frank is going to attack Mike's base for 3 with the Peacekeeper, restoring 2 off his own base, so 6 damage on Mike's base, 3 on Frank's base. And Frank going to deploy Sabine and another 3 damage to Mike's base, bringing the damage total up to 9. And now Frank is absolutely going to swarm the ground arena as he plays both of those 2-cost units that we saw in his hand, Battlefield Marine and Rebel Pathfinder. And what you were looking at on the board, that is exactly why Kira named Rebel Assault, because the Rebel Assault would be absolutely fantastic action economy for Frank, as he could attack with 2 units in 1 action, and they both get +1 power, and he has 3 rebels in the ground arena. So the first action of this next round will be on Mike, and he is staring down quite a bit of damage. Already has 9 damage on his base. And just with the units we see on Frank's side of the table, that is a possible 11 damage to Mike's base. Mike does have Kira ready in the ground arena, so Kira could attack and defeat at least one of these units that Frank has in the ground arena. And Kira is going to take out the Sundari Peacekeeper. The Peacekeeper doing some great work here in game one. So the Peacekeeper defeated. Kira takes 1 damage back, and now the action back over to Frank. And he is going to attack with the Battlefield Marine first. So that's another 3 damage to Mike's base, putting the damage total up to 12. Now Mike does still have all 5 resources ready, and he can deploy Quinlan here in this round, and that is the next action he will take. So Quinlan is deployed. And now Frank is going to get in with another 2 damage, attacking with Rebel Pathfinder, before Quinlan could possibly attack and defeat the Pathfinder. It appears as though Mike has Surprise Strike in hand. That would allow Mike to attack with Quinlan. Gaining 3 power would bring his power up to 6 total. That could defeat Sabine and save 3 damage from Mike's base. Another great card would be Plo Koon in this spot. Plo Koon could come out, ambush, and defeat Sabine, because with the coordinate being turned on, he would attack for 6, but I don't think Mike has Plo Koon in hand. So he's going to play the Surprise Strike, attacking with Quinlan, and Quinlan will attack and defeat Sabine. But now Frank is going to smuggle Cassian Andor into play. And since Cassian was smuggled, he enters play ready. Well, he doesn't enter play ready. I guess technically he would enter play exhausted. But because he was played using smuggle, he does get to ready. So that is important for Frank, because that's another 3 damage he's showing on the board. And Mike is going to play another copy of Surprise Strike. Red 3 attacks Frank's base for 6 damage. So Frank's base now up to 9 damage. And now the action back on Frank. And now the question is, does he attack with Cassian or claim the initiative? He does attack with Cassian, dealing another 3 damage to Mike's base. 17 damage on Mike's base, just 8 HP remaining. Now Mike does claim the initiative. But Mike certainly finds himself in a tough spot as he is staring down still 3 units in Frank's ground arena. Now Mike can deal with one of those units with his first action, but Frank should still be able to get at least 3 damage in with either the Battlefield Marine or Cassian Andor. Mike is just going to scoop it up. Can't recover here in game 1. Great start for Frank. He takes the 1-0 lead here at SCG CON Atlanta. We are getting ready for game 2 of round 3 here at SCG CON Atlanta, the Friday 1K event. Frank on the right piloting Sabine ECL with a 1-game lead over Mike, aka BobbySapphire. On the left from KTOD piloting Quinlan Tarkentown. And while the players get ready, I want to take some time to mention Laser Gaming. If you like the tokens we are using here on the channel, be sure to check out Laser Gaming. All of their products are fantastic quality and they look great. You can put in code NEXTGENGAMING at checkout for 5% off their Star Wars Unlimited products. And you can take your Star Wars Unlimited gameplay experience to the next level. So to start things out here in game 2, Mike with the initiative, and he is going to play who may very well be the cutest creature in all of the Star Wars universe. Grogu comes down into the ground arena. Mike's actually running 3 copies of Grogu in his deck. We didn't see Grogu in game 1, but he's out in turn 1 here in game 2. And Frank, you better believe it, he is using the Sabine action ability, 1 damage to each base. And now Frank is going to play a Green Squadron A-Wing into the Space Arena. It looks like we have flipped the ground and the Space Arena here in game 2. So this time around, the Space Arena on the top of your screen, and then the ground arena will be on the bottom. Mike did claim the initiative, and with his first action going to take advantage of Grogu exhausting the Green Squadron A-Wing. That will save at least 3 damage here in this round, and Frank using that Sabine action ability, 1 damage to each base. And it looks like Mike is going to pay 2 for his own Green Squadron A-Wing, using the Quinlan triggered ability, 1 damage to Frank's Green Squadron A-Wing. And now the action back on Frank. He will play another 2-cost unit. This time it is Battlefield Marine. Now the action is back over to Mike. He could use the epic action on Tarkentown to take out the Green Squadron A-Wing, but he could also just claim the initiative and then attack into that Green Squadron A-Wing with his own. The Green Squadron A-Wing so good on offense when attacking, but when defending, not so good, right? Just 1 power when defeated, or excuse me, when defending, but does have raid 2, so attacks for 3 power total. Mike did just claim the initiative, and he is going to take out Frank's Green Squadron A-Wing right away. Just 1 damage back onto Mike's A-Wing. And Frank going 3 for 3 with that Sabine action ability. He has used it in all 3 rounds so far. 1 more damage to each base. And now the action ability on Grogu used. Battlefield Marine exhausted. Frank deploys Sabine, and look at that. Mike was ready to go with Kira. I really like that play because look at what Frank has in his hand. We see the Darksaber, which very likely would have come down right there onto Sabine. So Mike played that line very well, using the exhaust first, kind of waiting for Frank to deploy Sabine. Gets Kira down, names Darksaber, so that Frank can't play Darksaber here in this round. Now Frank will play the the Fleet Lieutenant. And that is going to allow Sabine to attack with a power buff here, 2 additional power, and he is going to go into Mike's base. That is going to be 5 damage to Mike's base. So 8 damage on Mike's base, 3 damage on Frank's base. And while Mike did take 5 damage from Sabine last round, he did stop that Darksaber from being played. The Darksaber on Sabine could have dealt 7 damage to Mike's base, or could have even taken out that Grogu. So now with Mike still having the initiative, the Grogu action ability once again, exhausting Sabine. And Frank is going to get in with the Battlefield Marine, 3 damage to Mike's base. And now the action back over to Mike. Kira ready. Kira is going to attack and defeat the Fleet Lieutenant. And now Frank is going to play a Cassian Andor from his hand, so Cassian will not ready this time around. And now Mike is going to deploy Quinlan, and Frank adding another unit to the board. Alliance X-Wing in the Space Arena. Now Frank is essentially tapped out here, right? He's used all of his resources. All of his units are exhausted. So Mike has plenty of options to finish out the round on his side. Still has Quinlan ready, has Green Squadron A-Wing ready. That could potentially trade, and that is going to be the first play we see. So Green Squadron A-Wing trading with the Alliance X-Wing. Frank just claims the initiative. Now, we did not see Plo Koon in Game 1. Plo Koon would be fantastic here, but it, once again, doesn't look like Mike has Plo Koon in hand. Plo Koon could come in and ambush Sabine right off the board, or even the Cassian Andor, as Plo Koon would ambush with a total of 6 power. We know Mike can take out the Battlefield Marine with Quinlan. So there goes Quinlan attacking into Battlefield Marine. The Marine defeated. Mike still has 5 resources to work with. And it does look like he has a couple cheaper units in hand. You know Mike wishes he had the Plo Koon because he needs to save as much damage as he can by continuing to clear out Frank's units. Mike is in a spot where he is desperately trying to stabilize the board in every way he can. But Frank did claim the initiative, so we know that Frank is going to be able to get in at least 3 damage and attack with one of those 2 units in the ground arena at the start of the next round. Mike thinking through this play, and he is going to put Ezra Bridger in the ground arena. Quinlan triggered ability, 1 damage to Cassian Andor. And then Mike will play a Sabine in the ground arena as well. So Mike has 5 units in the ground arena right now. But again, keep in mind, Frank with the initiative, he's going to be able to get in at least 1 attack. And almost certainly will go to Mike's base. Frank is once again the aggressor here and trying to race as fast as he can. There is one thing for certain. Grogu has gotten a ton of mileage for Mike here in Game 2. Grogu's been using the Force to exhaust units left and right, but starting out in this round, Frank is going to make a big play. Here comes Wrecker off of the Energy Conversion Lab. So Wrecker will have ambush. Frank is going to use the When Played ability on Wrecker first, defeating a resource, dealing 5 damage to Quinlan. And then Frank will get to ambush into Kira. Kira had 3 damage on. So just 2 HP remaining. Wrecker has Overwhelm. So 5 damage to Mike's base, 16 damage on. Great way for Frank to get a big chunk of damage to Mike's base and also really clean up that ground arena. Action back over to Mike, still staring down 2 units in Frank's ground arena that are ready and can both deal at least 3 damage to base. So Grogu, once again, going to be used, exhausting one of these 2 units. Mike deciding whether he wants to exhaust Cassian or Sabine. He is going to exhaust Cassian Andor. And then Frank is going to use Sabine to deal 3 more damage to Mike's base. 19 damage on. Now Frank again tapped out at this point. He's used up those resources. No more ready units. Mike is going to use the epic action on Tarkin Town, dealing the final 3 damage needed to defeat Wrecker. Frank has claimed the initiative, and now the question is, does Mike have a way to answer both of these units that Frank currently has in the ground arena? Because we know, if given the opportunity, Frank will go 3 damage into Mike's base right away at the start of the next action phase, and that would put Mike just 3 damage away from losing this match. So Mike is going to attack with Ezra Bridger into Sabine. That does not defeat Sabine. Sabine still has 1 HP remaining. 2 damage back onto Ezra Bridger, and he just discards that top card. So Ezra Bridger has the ability, when he completes an attack, you can look at the top card of the deck. You can play it, discard it, or keep it on top, and Mike just discarded that top card. It was Bamboozle, which does not do anything in this situation. And then Mike is going to attack into Sabine with his own Sabine. The on-attack ability dealing 1 damage to Frank's base. And Frank's leader unit, Sabine, is defeated. And now Mike is going to smuggle Cassian Andor into play, but even with Cassian being ready, he cannot take Frank's Cassian off the board. He would be 1 damage short, so Mike just attacking into Frank's base with his own Cassian Andor. 7 damage on Frank's base, but we've got 19 damage on Mike's base. And again, Frank having the initiative, still has 1 of those units in play. Cassian Andor can go 3 damage to Mike's base with Frank's first action. So Frank would just need to find 3 more damage at that point, unless he played something like Fleet Lieutenant and attacked with Cassian, buffing Cassian up. That would deal an extra 2 damage, but he does not have Fleet Lieutenant. Frank just attacking with Cassian Andor into Mike's base. 22 damage on Mike's base. Mike is going to attack with Ezra Bridger into Frank's base, discarding the top card of his deck once again. It was Han Solo. Frank now has 10 damage on his base.
I'm not used to these counters. I use dice. I had written 7. I had 7 on my base.
And now the action back over to Frank. Frank realizing that he did not ready Sabine after being defeated last round. So that is an extra damage that Frank could potentially deal. And Frank is going to use the Sabine action ability. 1 damage to each base. 23 damage on Mike's base. 11 on Frank's base. Mike just 2 HP remaining. Now with Frank using the Sabine action ability on his last action, that tells us that he is probably not holding for a cause I believe in, because if he had it, he just plays it on his last action, and that probably finishes the game. So the action on Mike, he is going to play a surprise strike, attacking with Sabine with an extra 3 power. That's going to be 6 total damage to Frank's base. And the damage counts have certainly tightened up a bit. 23 damage on Mike's base, 17 damage on Frank's base. Now with Mike going into Frank's base with that attack, that tells me that Mike believes his only way to win this game is to outrace Frank. Now that is a tough task, and he may need Ezra Bridger to come in big to get that job done, but Mike is still showing a possible 3 more damage with Cassian Andor. And Frank is just going to play Poe Dameron, a massive threat in the ground arena. And now with the action back on Mike, he's in a very similar spot as last round. He is staring at 2 units in Frank's ground arena, and if either one of those units are still on the board at the start of the next round and Frank is able to get the initiative, this match is over. So such a tough spot for Mike. If he takes any further actions, there's no doubt that Frank would claim the initiative. Mike does still have 5 ready resources. He's got Grogu and Cassian Andor still ready. Unfortunately, Grogu will not do anything with these exhausted units that Frank has. And Mike is just going to claim the initiative. He doesn't have an answer in hand, so he claims the initiative. And now he's going to need something big at the start of this round. 23 damage on Mike's base, 17 damage on Frank's base. Does Mike have a way out of this situation? And it looks like he needs a miracle. Surprise strike is played. Ezra Bridger, 6 damage into Frank's base, looking for something on top. Sabine is not going to change anything, and that will do it. Frank takes the 2-0 win here in round 3. Great match between these two fantastic players, and Frank remains undefeated at SCG CON Atlanta. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned for more SCG CON Atlanta coverage here at Next Gen Gaming SC. May the force be with you, and until next time, take care.